Emma and Rachel were two bright and cheerful college students who shared a dorm room at a small university in a quiet town. They had been best friends since high school and were excited to be living together while they worked toward their dreams. Emma wanted to become a teacher, while Rachel hoped to be a nurse. They were well liked by their classmates and professors, always smiling and helping others. On a cold winter night in February, something happened that would change everything. The girls were seen walking back to their dorm after dinner with friends. They laughed and chatted as they climbed the steps, just like any normal night. But the next morning, when their friends came to find them, their dorm room was empty. Their beds were made, their phones and wallets were still on the table, but Emma and Rachel were gone. The police were called and a search began. Everyone in town was shocked. How could two young women vanish without a trace from their own room? The university canceled classes for days as officers searched the campus, nearby woods, rivers, and even underground tunnels. Flyers were posted everywhere. Parents, friends, and volunteers joined the search, but no one could find any clue about what had happened to Emma and Rachel. As the weeks turned into months, the case grew colder. The police interviewed dozens of people, friends, teachers, maintenance workers, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual. Surveillance cameras at the dorm building showed the girls entering the building, but no footage showed them leaving. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The families were devastated. They held candlelight vigils and pleaded on the news for anyone with information to come forward. Rumors spread throughout the town and the campus. Some people said the girls had run away. Others believed something terrible had happened to them. The police followed every lead, but none led to answers. Emma and Rachel's room remained untouched, as their families clung to the hope that one day the girls would return. Years passed, and new students filled the dorms. The once lively faces of Emma and Rachel faded into the background, just two more missing persons in a world full of unsolved mysteries. But their families never gave up hope. Every birthday, every holiday, they lit candles and kept the girls' memories alive. 6 long years passed since Emma and Rachel disappeared, and life in the town moved on, though the pain never fully left the hearts of those who knew them. One day, by pure chance, something strange caught the eye of a man named George. While he was browsing Google Street View images of the town, George wasn't looking for anything in particular. He was simply exploring the streets online. He clicked on the image of the road behind the university where few people ever went and zoomed in. What he saw made his heart race. In the background of the image, near an old abandoned factory, two blurry figures appeared standing close together. One of them seemed to be wearing a jacket with bright colors that looked eerily similar to the one Emma used to wear. The figures were frozen in the image, but something about them felt familiar. George shared his discovery on social media, and soon the image spread like wildfire. The police were alerted immediately. Investigators looked at the date of the image taken only a few months earlier and decided to visit the location. The old factory had been abandoned for years, but when officers arrived, they found something shocking. Hidden behind some broken walls and weeds, they discovered a hidden underground room. Inside the underground room, they found old blankets, empty food cans, and signs that someone had been living there recently. The search team widened the area and brought in dogs, and before long, they discovered a locked shed a few yards away from the factory. With careful steps, they broke open the door. To their astonishment, sitting inside the small shed were two women, pale, thin, frightened, but alive. It was Emma and Rachel. The officers were stunned as they helped the women out into the daylight. The girls were weak and confused, but recognized the officers. They had been held captive for years but had survived. The news spread across the nation. Emma and Rachel were immediately taken to the hospital. Their families rushed to their sides, tears of joy pouring down their faces. The girls couldn't remember every detail of their captivity at first, but they shared that a man they didn't know had lured them from their dorm, locked them underground, and kept them hidden for years. The blurry image on Google Street View had unknowingly captured their chance at rescue. Thanks to a random click, their nightmare had finally come to an end. As Emma and Rachel slowly began to recover, the town that had once mourned them now celebrated their return. They were surrounded by love, support, and endless kindness from friends, family, and strangers who had followed their story for years. The man responsible for their disappearance was quickly caught after police found fingerprints and evidence in the underground room and shed. He confessed to his crimes and was sentenced to life in prison. Emma and Rachel's story became a symbol of hope and resilience. Though they had lost 6 years of their lives, they were determined to move forward. They both started to speak at schools and community events, sharing their experiences and reminding people to stay safe and vigilant. The images of their smiling faces once again appeared in newspapers and television, but this time with headlines of survival and courage. Their families, who had never given up hope, finally found peace. The town, once haunted by the mystery, now stood united in joy. And it all began with a simple glance at a Google Street View image, a random moment that turned into a miracle. Six long years had passed since the day Emma and Rachel disappeared without a trace. For most people in the town, life had returned to normal. New students had arrived at the university, new businesses had opened, and the memory of the two missing girls had slowly faded into the background. But for their families, every single day felt like a fresh wound. The pain of not knowing what happened to their daughters never left them. They still kept their photos on the mantle of their bedrooms just as they were, and every year on the anniversary of their disappearance, they gathered with friends and neighbors to hold a vigil, hoping that one day they would have answers. It was during this time, completely by accident, that something unexpected happened. A man named George, who lived in a nearby city, was looking through Google Street View on his computer one evening. George enjoyed using the online map to explore places he had never visited, and sometimes he would look at random towns just to see what they looked like. That night, without thinking much of it, he clicked on the streets near the university, where Emma and Rachel had gone missing years before. As he clicked along the road near an old rundown factory behind the campus, something strange caught his eye. There, in the corner of one of the images, were two blurry figures standing near the edge of the building. The figures looked small and hard to see, but something about them made George pause. One of the figures appeared to be wearing a brightly colored jacket, the kind that Emma was known to wear often. Curious and uneasy, George zoomed in and saved the image. He shared it on a local online forum, asking if anyone else found it strange. The image quickly caught people's attention. Many dismissed it as nothing more than a coincidence, just a random people walking near an abandoned place. But others thought it was too odd to ignore. Someone shared the photo with the local police, and within days, detectives were taking it seriously. The image had been taken just a few months earlier, and the location was near an area that had never been fully searched, because it was considered dangerous and unstable. The police organized a team to investigate the old factory. The building had been closed for years, falling apart and covered in vines and broken glass. When officers arrived, they searched carefully, checking every corner. At first, they found nothing unusual, but then one officer noticed a section of the wall that looked like it had been disturbed recently. Behind a pile of rubble, they discovered a hidden entrance leading underground. It was dark, cold, and filled with old debris, but what they found inside shocked them. There were signs of life blankets, empty food containers, old clothes, and even children's books. It was clear that someone had been living there not too long ago. The search team widened their search and brought in more help, determined to find out who had been using this hidden place. Hope, which had long been buried under years of silence, flickered to life once more. Could it be that Emma and Rachel were still alive? The families, when they heard the news, clung to each other and cried, barely able to breathe. For the first time in years, they had a reason to believe that their daughters might finally be found. The police moved quickly once they discovered the underground room near the old factory. Every officer on the case felt the weight of what this could mean. Could Emma and Rachel, missing for 6 long years, truly still be alive? The search team expanded their efforts. They brought in search dogs, additional officers, and even volunteers who wanted to help. Not far from the hidden underground space, they noticed a small, rusted shed tucked behind overgrown bushes. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, but when officers approached, they saw faint signs of movement inside. The tension was unbearable as they carefully broke the rusty lock and opened the door. Inside the tiny dark space, huddled together on a thin mattress, were 2 women, weak, pale, and terrified. It was Emma and Rachel. For a few seconds, the officers could hardly believe what they were seeing. The girls looked up, confused and frightened by the sudden burst of light and sound. One officer softly said their names, and Emma's eyes filled with tears. Rachel reached out her hand, trembling. Both women were immediately helped out of the shed, wrapped in blankets, and gently guided to safety. They were too weak to walk far on their own and could barely speak at first. An ambulance was called and they were rushed to the nearest hospital. News spread like wildfire across the town and the entire country. Emma and Rachel had been found alive after 6 years of being missing, all thanks to a random Google Street View image that led the police to the right place. At the hospital, doctors and nurses worked carefully to help the girls regain their strength. They were severely malnourished and dehydrated, but they were alive. When their families arrived, the reunion was beyond emotional. Mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters all gathered, sobbing with relief, unable to stop hugging and holding the 2 young women. Emma and Rachel cried too, overwhelmed by the love and the fact that their nightmare was finally over. Slowly, they began to share pieces of their story. They explained that a man someone they didn't know had tricked them into leaving their dorm that night. He had promised to help them with something urgent, but instead led them to the factory area, where he locked them away. He had kept them hidden in underground rooms and sheds, moving them occasionally to avoid being caught. They were rarely allowed outside and were threatened constantly. They had survived by doing whatever it took to stay alive, never losing hope that one day someone would find them. The man responsible was quickly tracked down and arrested. He confessed to everything and was sentenced to life in prison without any chance of freedom. Justice was served, and the town that had once mourned now celebrated. Emma and Rachel's story became one of survival, hope, and the power of never giving up. They both faced a long road to healing, but with the support of their families, friends, and community, they began to rebuild their lives. They spoke at events to raise awareness about safety and missing persons, and they inspired people all over the country. Their courage reminded everyone that even in the darkest times, a glimmer of hope can still shine through. And in their case, it all started with one ordinary man scrolling through Google Street View who happened to notice something extraordinary.